Let's talk about electricity. You think you know what it is, right? I mean, you use it constantly. Right now, electrons are flowing through the device you're reading this on. Electricity is powering the lights around you, keeping your food cold, charging your devices. It's everywhere. So you must understand it, right? Alright, explain it to me. What happens when you plug something in? Where does the power actually come from? What is electricity at its core? Most people say something vague. It's energy. It's electrons moving. It's current in a wire. But here's what bothers me about those answers. They don't really explain anything. They just rename the mystery. Yes, electrons move, but why? What pushes them? And why does that push create light, heat, or motion? The truth is stranger than you think. The thing we call electricity is deeply strange, and the way we teach it completely hides that strangeness. We make it sound normal, predictable, safe. But when you actually look at what's happening behind the curtain, you realize we are manipulating something absolutely extraordinary, something that breaks almost everything you thought you knew about how the world works. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine a simple experiment. Take a piece of plastic, rub it quickly between your hands like you're trying to warm them. Now bring it close to the back of your hand without touching it. Watch how the tiny hairs on your arm rise up and move toward the plastic. You can feel the plastic pulling on them from a distance. Think about that for a moment. You just rub plastic. No batteries, no wires, no power source, just friction. And now that plastic can pull on your body through empty air. How? In your everyday experience of the world, things only push or pull when they touch. You push a chair, you touch it. You lift a book, you touch it. Forces require contact. But here is a piece of plastic that is not touching you. And yet it is pulling on the hairs of your arm across empty space. Most people simply say, static electricity. We learnt it in school. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. You are observing the force that holds every atom in your body together. The force that makes chemistry possible. The force that allows your neurons to fire, your muscles to contract, and your eyes to see. You are watching one of the four fundamental forces of the universe. And you think it's just a simple plastic trick. That's the problem. We have become so familiar with electricity that we forget how absolutely incredible it really is. When you rub that plastic, you strip electrons from your hands and pile them onto the plastic. Just a few trillion extra electrons. But here's the astonishing part. Those electrons repel each other with an incredibly enormous force. If you take two electrons separated by just 1 centimeter, the electromagnetic force between them is about 10⁴ quadred times stronger than gravity. That's a 1 followed by 42 zeros. For electrons, gravity practically doesn't exist. So the question naturally appears, if these forces are so enormous, why doesn't everything explode? The answer is surprisingly simple. Cancellation. Inside an atom, you have positively charged protons in the center and negatively charged electrons around them. Charges follow a simple rule. Like charges repel, opposite charges attract. The forces are huge, but they are almost perfectly balanced. That's why matter is usually neutral. The forces still exist, but they cancel each other out almost perfectly. When you rub the plastic and shift even a tiny number of electrons, you break that balance. And because the forces are so large, even a tiny imbalance produces effects you can feel. This completely changes how you should think about matter. When you hold a cup in your hand, you think you are touching a solid surface. But you're not. What you are actually feeling is electromagnetic repulsion. The electrons in your hand are pushing against the electrons in the cup. That's why your hand cannot pass through it. Your atoms never actually touch the atoms of the cup. There is always a tiny gap between them. In fact, you have never touched anything in your entire life. Everything you feel is electromagnetic repulsion. Now let's think about electrical wires. You have a copper wire connecting a wall outlet to a lamp. When you flip the switch, the light turns on instantly. But the electrons inside a wire move extremely slowly, about 1 millimeter per second. So how can the lamp light up immediately? The answer is that the wire is already full of electrons. When voltage is applied, electrons at one end push the next electrons, which push the next ones. It's like a line of people standing shoulder to shoulder. If you push the first person, the last person feels the push almost instantly. The push travels through the wire at nearly the speed of light. That push ultimately comes from a power plant where a massive turbine is spinning. Motion is converted into electricity through magnetism. Electricity and magnetism are not separate forces. They are two aspects of a single force, the electromagnetic force. Moving electric charges create magnetic fields. Changing magnetic fields create electric currents. That's why generators can convert motion into electricity, and motors convert electricity into motion. The entire electrical grid works on this principle. Water falls through a dam, turbines spin, electrons are pushed. That push travels through wires for hundreds of kilometers, and finally it lights a bulb in your home. All of this happens because of electromagnetism. When you push a door, when you walk, when you see light, when you feel heat, it's all electromagnetism. Chemistry is electromagnetism. Biology is electromagnetism. Your senses are electromagnetism. Your entire experience of reality is based on electromagnetic interactions. And the deepest part is this: the electromagnetic force cannot be explained by something simpler. It is one of the fundamental forces of the universe. When you switch on a light, an enormous chain of electromagnetic events connects turbines, wires, electrons, light, and your brain. Just 200 years ago, none of this existed. But when humans discovered how to manipulate this force, we completely transformed civilization. Electricity gave us instant communication, telegraph, telephone, radio, television, internet. It gave us artificial light, motors, computers. Modern life runs on electricity. So what is electricity really? Electricity is not a thing. It is not a substance. It is simply the name we give when we manipulate the electromagnetic force to perform useful work. And it is proof that the world is not what it seems. The world appears solid and mechanical, but in reality, it is made of invisible fields and forces acting across space. That is the true universe we live in. Electricity didn't just change our tools, it changed our idea of reality. Because once you understand what is actually happening, you can't look at the world the same way again. You look at a light bulb and you no longer see just glass, metal, and light. You see an almost impossible process. You see invisible fields stretching through space. You see electrons responding to differences in potential. You see matter organized so precisely that a tiny disturbance can illuminate an entire room. And then you begin to realize something even more unsettling. Electricity isn't only something we use outside ourselves. It also exists inside us. Your nervous system works because of electrical differences. Your thoughts, your reflexes, your movements, even the beating of your heart, depend on electrical signals traveling through living tissue. You are not a separate observer of this phenomenon. You are, in part, an electrical creature. Every neuron in your brain maintains a difference in charge between its interior and exterior. That means each nerve cell is in a sense a tiny living battery, and when a neuron activates, it opens microscopic channels in its membrane. Charged ions cross from one side to the other. The charge changes. An electrical wave forms, and that wave travels, not exactly like current in a copper wire, but as an organized disturbance in the electrical state of the cell. That means when you remember something, when you feel fear, when you recognize a face, when you decide to move your hand, electrical activity is involved. This isn't metaphor, it isn't poetry, it's literal. Your thoughts are tied to electrical patterns in a biological structure. Think about that carefully. Electricity doesn't just power cities, it also powers your consciousness. And this is where the story becomes even stranger. Because when you say electricity, you often imagine a current flowing through a wire. But in reality, much of what makes the modern world work doesn't depend simply on raw electron movement. It depends on the exquisite control of that movement. Controlling it, directing it, restricting it, allowing it at certain moments, and blocking it at others. That is what makes electronics possible. And electronics is different from raw electricity. In the same way, language is different from simple sound. It's not just about flow, it's about structure, it's about logic. Inside your phone there are billions of transistors. Billions. Each one acts like a tiny gate. It either allows current to pass or blocks it, depending on a control signal. And when billions of these gates are combined, something extraordinary emerges. Calculation, memory, images, audio, video, artificial intelligence. All the digital complexity of modern life arises from something astonishingly simple, repeated an absurd number of times. Allow current to pass, or stop it. Yes or no, on or off, 1 or 0. That's the part that should take your breath away. The immense complexity of the digital world, everything that appears intelligent, creative, and sophisticated, is built from tiny electrical differences governed by carefully engineered materials: silicon, atomic impurities, electric fields, barriers and pathways, nothing more. And yet from that simplicity emerge maps, conversations, music, translations, movies, financial systems, satellites, and global networks. All of it is nothing more than matter manipulating charge. It's easy to become so accustomed to this that we stop noticing how impossible it really is. Consider another example: a thunderstorm. Lightning seems completely different from household electricity. It feels wild, chaotic, primitive, and yet it is the same fundamental phenomenon. Inside a storm cloud, the movement of water, ice, and air separates electric charges. Regions with excess positive charge form, regions with excess negative charge form. The electric field grows. It grows and grows until the air, normally an insulator, can no longer resist, and then the sky collapses electrically. A channel of plasma tears through the air. Charge discharges. Temperature rises to extreme levels in a fraction of a second. The air expands violently, and what you hear as thunder is the atmosphere reacting to the brutal passage of electricity. So the same principle that powers your lamp can also split a tree in half. The difference is not the nature of the force. The difference is scale, organization, and control. In many ways, that is what civilization is: learning to domesticate forces that in the wild would be destructive. Fire, pressure, the atom, electricity. Domestication doesn't mean we understand everything. It only means we understand enough to use it. And that leads to another important idea. Our technology often creates the illusion of total understanding, as if because we can build generators, power grids, and microchips we must fully understand electricity. But we don't. We know how to describe it with extraordinary precision. We know equations that predict its behavior with astonishing accuracy. We know how to design systems that rely on it with near-perfect reliability. But at the deepest level, the philosophical question remains: why does such a force exist? Why does the universe contain electric charge? Why do fields exist? Why do some particles respond to them, and others do not? In physics, there comes a point where you can no longer explain something in terms of something more basic. You can only say, this is how the universe is. That makes many people uncomfortable. We want everything to reduce to intuitive pictures. We want visible mechanisms, gears, tiny balls colliding with each other. But reality does not owe us intuition. It is not obligated to resemble the metaphors that are comfortable for the human brain. Electricity is one of the clearest examples of that. We use it every day. We depend on it for almost everything. And yet its true nature lies far beyond ordinary experience. We don't see electric fields. We don't see electrons. We don't see potentials, charges, or field lines. We see their effects. We see the light turn on. We hear the motor spin. We feel the shock when touching a charged surface. But the deeper machinery remains invisible. We live immersed in something we cannot directly perceive. That should sound familiar, because it's true of almost all reality. You don't see atoms, yet you are made of them. You don't see space-time, yet you live inside its geometry. You don't see quantum fields, yet modern physics suggests everything that exists emerges from their excitations. Electricity is special because it is one of the few places where the invisible world touches everyday experience directly. You can feel it, you can use it, you can produce it with simple friction. You can store it, you can transform it into motion, heat, light, sound, and information. It is like a crack in the normal appearance of the world, a hint that beneath the surface of things lies a level far stranger than we usually imagine, and the deeper you go, the stranger it becomes. For a long time, people imagined electricity as a kind of fluid, something that flowed through wires like water through a pipe. It was a useful picture, but incomplete. Later we realized it was not a fluid in that sense. It was the collective behavior of charges in the presence of fields. Then Maxwell arrived and unified electricity, magnetism, and light within a single mathematical framework. Suddenly light itself was no longer a separate thing. Light turned out to be an electromagnetic wave. That means when you turn on a lamp, you're not just generating brightness. You are generating oscillations in the electromagnetic field that travel through space and eventually interact with specialized molecules in your retina. Seeing is an electromagnetic act. Listening to music from a speaker is also electromagnetic. A circuit guides varying currents. Those currents create changing magnetic fields. Those fields move a membrane. The membrane pushes air. The air moves your eardrum. Your neurons convert that into experience. It all begins with charge and field. And there is still another truth revealed by electricity, a truth about scale. In everyday life we think the large dominates the small. Mountains, buildings, planets. But in the world of matter, the forces that dominate are not the ones we notice at large scales. Gravity rules the cosmos, because it always attracts and acts on all mass. But inside atoms, inside chemistry, inside biology, the ruler is electromagnetism. Your body is not held together by gravity. Your bones don't have their shape because of gravity. DNA molecules do not exist because of gravity. Proteins do not fold because of gravity. Life, as you know it, is a work of electromagnetism. That means a huge part of what you consider tangible reality, texture, rigidity, color, chemistry, temperature, structure, depends on this interaction. Electricity is not a tool added to the world. It is part of the architecture of the world. And once you understand that, something shifts in how you see everyday things. The outlet on your wall stops being a trivial object. It becomes an interface with a massive network, connecting generators, transformers, transmission lines, deep physical principles, and engineering decisions accumulated across generations. A switch is no longer just a lever. It is a control point where material geometry either allows or interrupts an electromagnetic process. Your phone is no longer just a screen. It is a cathedral of charge controlled with atomic precision. And you yourself stop being just a solid body moving through a solid world. You become a dynamic organization of fields, charges, molecules, and signals. Perhaps that is the most important realization. Electricity doesn't just give us technical power, it gives us a new way of seeing. It forces us to abandon the naive image of the world as a collection of solid objects, simply colliding with each other. It forces us to accept a universe that is more abstract, more invisible, and far deeper. A universe where the vacuum is not truly empty. A universe where space itself can be filled with fields. A universe where a difference in charge in one place can reorganize matter somewhere else. A universe where the invisible is not secondary. It is fundamental. And perhaps that is why electricity has always felt almost magical. Because in a sense it breaks the intuition we evolved with. It was not designed for easy understanding. It was designed, if that word can be used, for the universe to function. We came later. We observed. We experimented. We discovered patterns. We wrote equations. We built machines. And slowly we learned how to converse with one of the deepest forces in nature. That is what you do every time you turn on a light. You are not just activating a device. You are participating in a chain of events, connecting fundamental physics, human history, engineering, materials, fields, and perception. You are touching, without truly touching, one of the most important invisible structures of the universe. And perhaps that is the best definition of electricity. Not a fluid, not a thing, not a mysterious substance hidden inside wires, but a way the world is organized. A manifestation of the electromagnetic force, a way the universe allows energy to move, information to travel, matter to respond, light to exist, and life to think. The next time you flip a switch, try not to see it as something ordinary, because it isn't. Behind that tiny gesture are invisible fields stretching through space, charges obeying deep laws, materials engineered to channel immense forces, and an entire civilization built upon the ability to control what once must have looked like a miracle. That is electricity. Not something common, not something simple, but one of the most astonishing revelations about reality.